think that's the deep dive today. Before we go in there, very quickly, pleasure to be the host today. For those who haven't met me yet, I run F10 for Europe. And what is F10? Very briefly, our mission is to accelerate tech startups, but then also unite them with the bigger companies out there, with the financial services companies. Like, for example, we have 6 in-house here, obviously, but Julius Baer and other big companies that are trying to innovate, not only from in-house, but also from external sources, which normally would be startups, early stage, or especially also later stage startups. Which leads us to how we run, right? So it's really everything about the ecosystem, the corporates that I mentioned, startups also mentioned in different maturities, early, later stage, but very important as well, the investors and mentors supporting the entire ecosystem, making sure that things run smoothly. We are currently present not only in Zurich and Switzerland, but also in Spain, Singapore, and currently, I think next week or in 2 weeks, starting the incubation program for the first time in the Nordics with a special focus on climate and finance, the overlap, we call it climate fintech. So the environmental part of ESG, with a big focus there. Few numbers, normally we look at 2,500 startups per year, which means so far over 11,000 startups reviewed, also over 230 that went through our programs so far globally, with collective cumulative investment amounts in those startups of 280 million, and maybe just most notably this year, Yokoi, you might have seen them with an 80 million round from US money as well. Pretty good successes. Here, just a few of the partners. I have mentioned them, like we work together with them and make sure they get a little bit of innovation from the external as well. So InsurTech is the new one. The team here in Switzerland around Magdalena, you have seen is here. Meli is in the office, but not in the audience here. I have seen Thibaut here. We have Lucas here, and also Andy, obviously running the global operations, and Lucas was around in the office. So if you see these people, say hi. And just very briefly on history, we were started inside of 7 years ago. This year did a spin off with a management buyout. So the management did a buy-in, bought like a good part of the company, to combine it with an external investment round to now also expand and do, for example, things like we are doing in the Nordics and go into other regions. That's it from my end as an introduction, and I'm handing it over to Andreas and or both of you with your slides.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you very much. Yes, welcome also from my side and from Dominik. As mentioned, we have already been somehow introduced by Marc. I will skip that. So whenever you have time or personal time afterwards, we are here to chat, or you're also all invited for a beer or whatever at Ulma. So which is now in St. Gallen. So happy if you want to join us. So just FYI. We all know the problem actually from our daily lives. When we go on holiday, we have the issue that when we come with our Swiss plugs, we need somehow a travel adapter, and the same is actually true for business systems. They have different data models, they have different ways to connect, they have different ways to communicate, etc. And as Marc said before, we have the issue that we want to bring together different systems, whether they are banking systems, insurance systems, or sales systems, CRM systems, either on one channel, or we want just an end-to-end connection between two or many systems. We have there some few key problems, which is heterogeneous, so there is a spelling mistake, IT systems, which complicate collaboration as well as communication. We have a lot of unflexible legacy systems, as well as officially as well in banking, as well as in insurance industries, which also creates a lot of problems in cooperation. We have a lot of data silos, and we have also more and more regulation and compliance, which need to be somehow integrated into the different systems, which is not as easy, especially if they're not that flexible, which legacy systems often are. One MIT professor, which is pretty famous, said that data integration by itself is still the 800-pound gorilla in the corner, and everyone has it in spades. So there is, since now, not really a good solution to data integration. There are many companies out there who say they rule the world, they do it better. Honestly, we say as well, we do it better, we rule the world. But just to say you a few words about us, why we think we can do it better and why we are able to talk about data integration. to keep it really short, we basically said we create a documented and easy to orchestrate standardized data model. So we took it differently. We are not doing an end-to-end integration. We made an entire platform which is able to make sure that all the different systems, no matter it's insurance, banking, whatever system, can communicate with each other. This data model, which is universal, no matter where you are and which industry you are, helps you for data exchange, data collaboration, as well as data orchestration for any application, execution, performance, etc. And we are independent from any technology or data source format. I will not go into detail here more than what's written on the slides. You will anyway get it as handouts. But what we are basically currently doing, we are a data orchestration framework. So no matter where you are and where the data from which level of CRM, ERP, data storage, data lake, etc., we can make sure that the connection between the different systems is working, and then you can communicate it. And we actually do it by adapters. So we basically build a reusable API or connection to any system, and you just have to parameterize it according to your specifications. So whenever you have a system, we have an adapter to that, for example, SAP, to Avalok, to Excel, whatever, and we bring it then on a universal data model level. And from there, you can work basically all of it in the different levels, whether it's a KPI, a report, business rules, etc. Obviously, it's not about us today, but just that we see the world of data integration a little bit different, and that's why we say we are also experts here talking with you about data integration. Talking now about data integration basics, giving it over to Dominik.
Okay, data integration basics is the goal is to have different data source and connect this to a unique view, so that you have one single source of truth, and it's you need it for the prerequisites to processing, including analytics, reporting, and forecasting. And normally you have a network of data source, a master server, and clients that would have this information. Then data integration in 4 steps. You have to define your business scope and also your system that you would integrate. And you have to understand in which process you could benefit from that. And then you have to connect the systems together. And that is also the mapping of the tables, fields, and systems, that they could speak with each other. And on 3rd step, you have to test the data connection and do it with a few sets of data. So when you have a failure or an error, you could correct them and then do it again until your unique view is okay. And on the last step, you have to sync the systems so that they do it the unique view every day or every hour, and you have up-to-date system data. Then data quality is also very important, because on the data security, the data quality is not good. You have perhaps some problems in the processor. You sent the package to the wrong client, and that's a bad impact for your business. The data quality is to have consistent data, also data that are right formatted and have nothing that fails. The data must be up to date, and that should be complete, not with missing values or something like that. That should be relevant for the business and also the accuracy. then the importance of automated tests. Software tests saves money, because when you test your software every day, you find the errors really fast. We test by actesy. We test every night our system, and so we have the next day we have some reports that give you some errors, and it's cheaper to correct them in an early stage. With security tests, you could make your system better and safer. And also with regular testing, you have the possibility to find errors quickly and fast, and can correct it. And that means that all these things are that you have more customer satisfaction, and that's the main reason we should test systems, because when it's have a failures in the system, that's not good. And when you find it in early stage, you could correct them very fast.
And maybe Dominik, just as an add-on, to make this nexus clear, it's one thing to have data integration between two or many systems running, but if there is, for example, an update or a release change in a specific system and you are not testing it continuously, you obviously do not see whether there is a mistake or whether the data integration / data flow is working. And that's important, because otherwise you basically expand the mistake or the missing data in various systems, because in a cosmos of systems, as we're living now, more and more connected system, obviously, testing is key to data quality. So it's not a thing that data integration is just a thing with data integration, which normally is the key nowadays projects, because it's at the end, obviously, of a project that you do the integration between two systems, and then obviously you do not have any budget, any time, or any whatever, so you forget testing. But especially if you forget testing on a continuous level, not on the level when you just do the data integration, then obviously you have potentially any or some mistakes later on, which can falsify your statistics, your data, etc., etc.
Then when you have to do a data migration, you must define which systems you want to migrate, also which data you want to migrate. That's also a part of the department that could not a system do for you. Then you have to say which system is the source system and which is the target system. And then of that, you have to define transaction rules, what would happen with this data. And then also at the fourth step, you have to extract the data, do it also with a few data set and not with the whole, because when you have errors, you could repeat them again. Then you have to correct the false data and do it again until your data set is correct. And then at the last step, you could transfer the data to the new system. We do it by actesy. We do it with definition of what data must be transferred. Then we parameter our adapters and define the source and target systems. Then we make a technical, a semantical standardization into our data model, inclusive our documentation. And we made a simplification of the data model. Then we define the transformation rules. And then we extracted the data, and in the next step, we correct them with the ongoing audit trail. So in every step, we could make the correction and every time you could make the correction. Yeah. And then we could transfer the data from the target system from the source system to the target system. With this process, we have the data transfer audited. We could do it sustainable. And with the actesy test suite, you have already a correct and good system and database. And the data management is a collection of measure, process, and concepts that says that considered that the elements of data lifestyles management, data quality, data protection, data security, and data access, also data governance is in this process. And it's the goal to have a good and optimal support for the data quality. And it's for all the departments important that you have a good and optimal data quality. Now I hand over to Andreas.
Thank you, Dominik. And maybe also just as a short summary from what you heard before, actually, for us, data integration is not an isolated task. So that you have basically just a data integration. Obviously, yes, sometimes you basically just need one data integration, but data integration, data migration, data management, data quality, all of it is together linked. Because when you have already a data integration, especially if it's made well, not just an end-to-end integration of two systems, you can reuse it as well for data migration, at least in our current tech stack. Here, obviously, I just wanted to show you some, or we want to show you some data integration services which are out there. Some of them are bigger, some of them are smaller. Obviously, we made us bigger, although we are smaller. But that's obviously the advantage of the ones who are presenting. So obviously, we have different companies like MuleSoft, like Zapier, like Boomi from Dell, Workato, etc. Typical. This for you basically is also just an overview which companies are out there you could use for data integration. Obviously, we would be happy with you use us, that's clear. But there are also other competitors out there which are good, which do a good job, obviously, because otherwise they wouldn't be on the market. That's just what it is. And all of them have advantages and disadvantages, and it's basically up to the specific use case, specific wherever you are, whether you are using, for example, us or Talent or MuleSoft or Zapier, etc. Obviously, we're happy to show you and explain you why we are better, but that's another topic. So let's come to the next slide. So what are for us do's and don'ts in data integration, data management, data migration? So first of all, planning by itself is one of the best things we can recommend, because there's no worse thing if you get, I believe you get the slides as well, but just you're free to follow. So really do an architecture of your data integration plan. Really do a planning and take your time, which involves all business units, because there is no worse thing that you just need to integrate IT and forget about business units, because business units are at the end effect the people who are using it, and IT is only implementing it. Then also do allocate an adequate resources and budget, time-wise as well as cost-wise, because there is such a, I don't know kind of how it's called in English, but Sprichwort, which is saying if you buy cheap, you buy twice. So obviously, it's what it is. I mean, we know it from our daily lives. So that doesn't mean you have to go for the most expensive one, but compare performances. Also give yourself a lot of calendar time that you really do not have to stress through all of it. Do a detailed data mapping, because if you already are doing data mapping, then obviously you should think about what are the next steps in 1, 2, 3 years, which data do I need from the specific system, because the process of it, you're doing it already, so it makes time because you already are in the routine of data mapping. always do stick with the must-haves, because there is a thing in IT which is always a really hard thing. There are a lot of nice-to-haves in any IT solution, but nice-haves are not must-haves, because must-haves we need it for the business, and nice-haves are like when you have a car. Yes, it would be nice to have whatever in the car, but probably it's not needed for driving on the road. Which also says, do only integrate data you need. There is a shit ton of data, sorry the expression, and you probably do not need all of it, but you have to plan and see which data you really need. Simplify your processes, because if you are already integrating data, you can also use it for process mining or other services and simplify it. And do hire specialists. That could be us, there could be other ones, or you have hire internally, that you have a specific person who is doing data integration, because there is no worse thing that you say, yeah, we can do it by ourselves. That's what we figure out a lot of companies are doing, and saying it's not an issue, it's not a time-consuming issue, and at the end of it, a whole department of 3-4 people are doing it for half a year, working on it, and that's also some cost, to be honest. To also migrate to multi-cloud architecture, so really go into the cloud, make sure you are ready for the future, and also do simple reporting, because reporting is always a thing which can slow down process as well. And important, think in scenarios, create fallback plans if the integration fails, because they can fail, and it can be a really, really big problem if you rely on it, to be honest. So don't think that all data integration solutions are the same. Probably you have potentially the same issues sometimes as we figure and see. All of the solution providers saying we can do all of it together and we are the best and we can do it in this and this way. Yes, we're saying the same as well, but we are no kidding. The issue basically is you really have to compare performances and see what is there. So you really need a detailed scope plan and a must-have list, because otherwise you cannot really compare whether the vendors really can deliver what they are promising. Don't overlook performance, governance, and security, which is also important, because security and data protection by itself, it's clear that we should overlook it just by the fun fact of who do data integration. Don't assume anything, really plan. I cannot highlight it more than ever. Planning. It's really the case. You cannot imagine how many companies we are seeing which are saying, yes, we are doing this and this software, and now at the end we're doing data integration. And when you really ask them how they perform and how do they integrate or implement it, the answer is always, yeah, that's easy. That will be done anyway by the end of the process, at the end of the project. And we're like, yeah, go for it. Don't stick to manual data integration. Yes, it's easy to do data manual mapping on the Excel sheet, etc. But to be frank, if you have to do it twice, or if the department or you at the startup or wherever do it more and more and more again, sometimes it can get boring, and you are potentially in a bigger corporation a lever, because you are not willing to do data integration on a manual basis again and again and again, especially if there are solutions out there who do it automatically. Don't do independent but isolated working. So really, that's kind of like it sticks to the integrate and involve more business units. Data integration and data by itself is something which is important for the entire company, not only for IT, not only for the IT department. It involves always business units. And also identify next steps and deadlines. And don't say it comes anyway. Yes, it comes anyway. At the end comes anyway for all of us anyway. But identify the next steps and also define the deadlines. And also, to be frank, that's maybe not for data, at least in my point of view, not only for data integration, but don't use emails to manage projects. That's just a general one, just from what we see. And point number 8 is really something which I cannot highlight, like the planning, enough. Communication. Communicate. Yes, it's only data integration. It should be clear because it's somehow technical, etc. But don't get me wrong, technical people and business people, they speak a completely different language. And I'm saying that because I'm sitting normally between them, or I was sitting between them, because I'm a legal person. So we also speak different language. So communication is key, not only for data integration, but for any project, which then is linked again to number 7. Don't use email. And don't underutilize the available data. Data is key and crucial to any process, and you have also valuable data. So use the data you have. So don't say the data here is not important, but obviously stick to whatever is important for your business. So that was plus minus the 30 minutes. I hope you have many questions we can answer. Otherwise, thank you for your attention and handing it over to Marc again.
Thanks. I mean, you are not off the hook yet, obviously. Any questions from the audience? Else, I have a few.
Yeah, so for the questions for the audience, we have a
yes.
microphone that Claudine will bring you.
So you said you're building adapters for standard software. What about legacy systems?
It's also a standard now.
Yeah.
Would you? Okay. So technically, for we build adapters. In an adapter for us, it's a reusable API, reusable system connection. And for us, it doesn't matter whether it's standard software like SAP or whatever, or it's a legacy software. Yes, we build as well standard adapters for a legacy software. So as soon as it's built to the legacy software, it can be reused in any other project, in any other company. Obviously, you can think of it like a product, like a car. When you're sitting into the car, you can change seat position, you can change mirror position, etc. The same thing is true here for our adapters. So when we build one adapter or a bridge to, let's say, SAP, we can reuse it no matter whether it's in manufacturing, whether it's in finance industry, whether it's in pharmaceutical industry. The only thing you have to do is changing the mirror, changing the seat position, or parameterize it according to the specification of the specific installation at the customer.
So that's primarily the field mapping.
Exactly, the field mapping, and if there is, for example, a field or something new not in there, you have to change and expand the adapter. And also the adapter can also include rules, for example, like the application rules, merging rules. So if you want to bring, for example, together, I don't know, an SAP and a Salesforce data set, you bring it in, for example, into an Oracle system, you can say merge these two data sets into one Oracle data set, for example.
Then you have conflict resolution and what is...
Exactly.
Okay. We had, I
I
think...
hope this answers the question.
Thanks. So you both mentioned a couple of times that the solutions out there are different. They have different strengths and maybe also weaknesses. So what are, in your opinion, when it comes to evaluation, the most important or best practice criteria in finding the right solution for my kind of problem?
I think there is no answer like scheme F because I don't know your problem. I mean, I would need to know your problem. Obviously,
it's a lawyer, you know.
It
depends. It depends, exactly. No. I mean, it's frustrating, but the answer actually is really easy. It depends. It depends on what you want to do, whether it's standard, really a standard integration from one-to-one system. Then obviously there are new software and CPR which have really non-flexible processes. So sometimes, but then, yeah. Question basically is what you want to achieve. I mean, for me, I would take a look at how easy it is to integrate, how fast is it to integrate, and if there are experts who are able to do this integration. If you want to do it by yourself, obviously there can be as well a factor. You see, can I use it by myself, or do I need experts who could do it, right? Whether it's SAP or whatever. But we have a pretty detailed competitor analysis where a lot of factors are on there, actually about 61 or whatever. Factors. So if you're interested, obviously I can share with you the factor list, kind of what can be point of differences between the different vendors, etc. But the frustrating answer is yes, I would need to know a little bit more about your business case, then I could rather consult you. Otherwise, I have to say it depends to some extent. Sorry.
Which I think is totally a fair answer. I didn't want to make fun of that. I think often it depends because it's custom, right? It depends what your system is that you are connecting. So sometimes maybe it's already built and then it's fast. It's just adjusting the seats. But if it's not built, it's building the car or the adapter. I think that's the key question. And then it's price, other factors that you would have with any evaluation, and the goals that you're having with it. Like, is it a one-off? Is it continuous? What are the running costs? Yeah.
We have a question from online audience.
Oh.
The question is from Urs, and he's asking if you have a standard let me start again. Do you have standard adapters to core banking systems like Avaloq, Finova, Temenos, and Olympic?
We have currently Avaloq.
Okay, so currently Avaloq. Okay. If you have any follow-up questions, Urs, do not hesitate to write them in the chat.
Maybe as an add-on from our side, just to explain that with the adapters a little bit is, as soon as you have a system like HubSpot or whatever, an easy system where you have an open API, etc., then obviously such an adapter is easy to create. It takes some hours to create an adapter. For example, if we have one to HubSpot, but to HubSpot, for example, it would take a few hours, and then HubSpot could be integrated. If you have systems like Avaloq, Temenos, etc., or an SAP, the complexity of the system by itself is way higher, also with the data model, etc. Then it takes obviously a little bit more time than such an API to an adapter to HubSpot. But we normally calculate between, we're speaking here of weeks and probably 1 month to such a thing, but then it's integrated, it's reusable. So once the adapter, for example, also to Avaloq is built, then we can reuse it to other systems.
If I would want to integrate a new system that you don't have, do I pay as the first client for the full, or like how you approach this? Because I think this is a challenging question. Like, customer will say, well, you can reuse it for everyone. Why should I pay? You will say, well,
normally it depends obviously of the system. There are different models. One model is they really want to build it, and then obviously we're open to that. The other way is that there is a provision model in there, so if it's built, as soon as it's reused at another customer, they get a provision until obviously the adapter they paid for obviously is.
Okay, interesting. That's also a takeaway, I think, a trick on how to do it. I know you had a question.
Yes. Thank you very much for the presentation. So yes, it was kind of one of my observations as well, because the legacy system, although it's standard to have legacy system, it's just the past, they're all really unique and custom to every client. So even if you have one adapter on a legacy system for client A, even if it's the same system client B, the configuration will be different and there will be some changes. But more like the question is more from your experience in the projects and work you delivered. Can you show us some use cases where there was, let's say, client with system A and they couldn't have data extract by using one of your adapter? What have been the results? I don't know, better process or connection to the supplier, but I'm quite keen to hear some kind of examples.
May I have the clicker? Or
Sure,
is there the annex in there? Because in the annex we
just
have
copied everything you gave.
That's great. That's awesome. So we have 3 reference customers which we normally talk likely about it. One is Deloitte in Germany, which had a IFRS 16 case. It's about leasing, and there we talk about it was a stabilization of their internal Deloitte technology. A lot of Excel and other systems have been involved, and the system from them have been reused for calculating the leasing rates for European car manufacturers. And there, obviously, the problem was that with Excel, etc., because for us, Excel is just another database, another system. We also can have an adapter to, or web service, etc. And there, obviously, with our technology, Deloitte, obviously, you can think of it, they calculate it pretty strictly. With our technology, we have been able to deliver in 6 months the solution. And internally, they had about 18 months to make that. The other one, which is actually pretty a nice one, is this Porsche car manufacturer who had an issue with like all car manufacturers at Volkswagen with Dieselgate, and there obviously was to be really frank, we got to this project not because we are so awesome, just because it was a 9/11. Really, the fire was burning. To be frank, it's about vehicle typization. So every time the type of a vehicle gets access to a market like Switzerland, like Germany, like the US, the specific type has to be accepted by the authorities. So that I can, for example, buy the same Porsche as you can buy the same Porsche, and not everybody has to go to the authorities to say, yes, this Porsche is allowed to drive here. The issue here was that they have been doing that from many SAP and other systems. They have been just manually writing over the data in these sheets, which they had to hand it in at the authorities. All fine if it's about tires, if it's about windows, if it's about whatever. But at Dieselgate, it was about the milligram CO2. And obviously that was not so fine because they said, we want to have a validated and bulletproof process that I know this value you're taking out of the system is really the value and you're not manipulating it, because at that time there have not been that much trust in the market, especially from the authorities. And we basically did it there. The 6 months have been the duration which was needed by the authorities to deliver it. Otherwise, they haven't been able to sell cars in the US. And we made it in 6 months with different adapters to SAP and other systems. And they internally have a huge IT department. They said, we can do it, but just in 2 years or 24 months. And that was actually for us a really cool use case, but not because we are that sexy and nice like Apple or whatever, just because it was really a fire burning there. And the last one is at Erste Group. It was a factoring bank, the intermarket bank of Erste Group. There is about customer onboarding. They have internally, I believe, an old AS400 and other systems, really like legacy systems. And they had another client, one of the biggest industry clients in Austria, coming from an Oracle system, delivering factoring data, calculation data, bills paid, etc., and some levels made there, calculations and checks made there. And they called us in the beginning of, I believe, September 19 or 18. 19, it was 19. And said, yes, we need to have this customer onboarded in pretty short amount of time because we already guaranteed him that he will be onboarded by the end of September. So we did it in about 2 weeks. We did the entire adapters, which we have been lucky to reuse from other projects, as well as the adaptation to it, and have them be able, with testing and all of it, to deliver it within 3 or 4 weeks. That by the fact includes also negotiation, IT security, data protection, and all of it together really in the 3 to 4 weeks. That was even more 9/11 than Porsche. So we would be happy if you have ever a project, please at least 1 or 2 days a little bit earlier, that would be nice. So normally when they do data or an onboarding of such a customer, it takes them between 5 to 6 months to really make the entire process. And we did it in 3
So it seems to be like we always look at on the startup side at faster, better, cheaper, and for you it seems to be the faster that I hear again and again. Like, how do you get the credibility, or how, is there any contractual liability if you don't deliver in 6 months, or?
I mean, to be frank, if we would have been able to deliver at Porsche in 6 months, we wouldn't exist today anymore. Let's put it just this way. There wasn't a contractual liability, but if we wouldn't have been able to do it because we guaranteed it, they would have sued us out, to be frank.
Okay, so you basically guaranteed it,
yes,
and said we can do it,
yes.
And okay, understood.
Can I just follow up on this? The group with Erste Bank is very interesting. So you built an interface to the IBM S400, and it's still live, it's still being used.
Yeah, they already onboarded 2 or 3 more customers.
Yeah, because I mean, these old systems basically built before we are born are still being used everywhere, and IBM is just catching up now to build an interface on their system to allow their client to innovate, because otherwise it just can't. And basically, you are being quicker than IBM by interfacing quicker and faster. So it means based on that, other companies could basically plug on your interface to provide a different front end to example for like know your customer, for instance, or the web onboarding and using all your APIs.
If I understand your question correct, whether other customers can rely on what we've built for Erste, then it would be yes.
So yes, you have Erste Bank, you have you, actesy, and they have like whatever front end they use for onboarding their client, whatever capabilities they have to check the onboarding, to check the identity, etc. But let's say another supplier come and say the front end you use you can have like better, faster, cheaper. Same with other modules. You could replace them.
Yes.
And still plug to your interface.
Yes.
Okay.
Because for us, we strictly divide the level of data integration and the one above business solutions above. So processes, KPIs, reports, etc. So if there is an interface, we do not care what is below because the integration below is made and the connection to AS400, for example, is made. And whether there is sticking something on top of it, again, from wherever, that does not matter.
And I guess for you, it's quite interesting. I mean, I don't know your pricing model, but the more calls you have through your systems, the more usage, the better. So
there are actually different business models. There is one on the transaction side, as well as on the just RLC, recurring license charge for per month or processor. It depends. Obviously, if you have, for example, a expense reports, like transport train tickets, etc., and you have just 10 expenses or just 10 train tickets per month, obviously, and then transactions is not that nice to be priced because you still have to have the support and all of it working. Then it's more, for example, a monthly model. But for example, now in the private equity, which we have 2 customers, there is also then more on the transactional side.
And like also for obviously keeping and churn. Right? If you have somebody buying for the Zug, the train analogy, like the general, I can ride anything and I do 3 trips a year, I might just cancel it, right? So for you, it's good they use the system so they can easily justify and say, look, we have all these million calls that you are referring to, and therefore it's like pretty cheap, whatever monthly subscription.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, kind of the point I wanted to make is like the more you have also a front-end interface to your platform, the greater the usage of the platform and the better for you.
Probably, yes.
And last one, on the AS400, what is the kind of, you can read data, write data into such systems as well, and update, or just read and pass it to?
It's let's put it this way. The adapters by itself can read and write back. The adapters by itself can read them on real time, however you define real time, or whether you have to cache it or whatever. But they also can store it, for example, on a metadata base. If, for example, the system is not allowing the data be rewritten into the system, then obviously, yes, the adapter also to the AS400 could write data into the AS400. I'm not 100% sure whether we are allowed by Erste Group to do that, because it's then not us who is saying, yes, we write it back. It's depending on what the customer is saying and allowing us to really reuse/rewrite into the system.
Do you have an audit trail of everything you write?
Yes.
So there's an additional database basically adding all the changes.
Yeah, exactly. So all the data which is read, processed, manipulated, in positive sense, hopefully, manipulated, as well as written back, is all audit trailed within actesy. Obviously, that is not a database in the AS400. It's more than on a metadata level, which is saying everything which was in connection with actesy/the adapters, etc., is in a specific audit trail. And then on a compliance-ready level, which we have learned earlier in the days in the pharmaceutical industry.
I had a question on, like you were saying, don't just take any data, know what data you want to keep and migrate somewhere, right? But how do you know what data you want if you don't even know maybe all the use cases and analytics and maybe future things you want to do with it? You say I just do it later, or is it like?
I would say use a technology which is allowing to use and easily use data integration. Also, if you, for example, if you just choose XYZ data, fine, but use a technology for data integration and connecting the system, which also allows you afterwards to easily add new data from A to B, for example.
Because then you would also need to have the communication to the people relying on the meta aggregated data to know, oh, we actually have additional fields that you don't see, but if you really need them, kind of.
I mean, we are a solution provider on a data integration, data management, data migration level. Obviously, we are not a consulting firm who is saying, this is the data you need for your business, this is the data you need for your use case. Because we, as you have seen, we have clients in the pharmaceutical as well, in the production industry, in the banking industry. So obviously, the use cases are different everywhere, and we do not know which data you specifically use. We are experts in bringing the data from the system and let them communicate and collaborate, but not which specific data you need, because for that you have then the business units. That's why you should include them and not just do it by the IT.
More questions? If you had one magic wish or want to say towards your counterparties on the corporate side, on the data responsible, project responsible person, what would you want them to do or not do? Or
I believe as a challenger as we are, and obviously also a lot of the startups is it, I would say it's especially also for corporates that use more modern tech. I mean, there's this nice speech or sprichwort like, you never get fired for hiring McKinsey or for buying SAP, etc. But to be frank, I'm not saying they're not good, not saying they have a bad software, but SAP, for example, not saying about McKinsey because we haven't been in the space now to hire them. We do not earn that much money now, hopefully later on. But let's put that aside. SAP is nice, as well as other bigger companies are nice, but as a small number or small company, you're always a number in their entire sales cycle. And choose the partner for data integration, data management wisely, because normally you are stick to it. For example, SAP customers are still stick to them, even if they have R3 and now move to SAP for HANA. They are just need to move to it because it's hard to get then out of the system. So I would go for more decentralized, easier to use systems so that I can switch the systems underneath and the data system I have. So basically have more guts and go for innovation and not just for the ones you are safe. So leave the comfort zone.
So basically that's on two levels. Number one is like the SAP and alternative, maybe CRM, ERP systems, but also two, obviously, who then to use to work with, potentially with a startup to do things. Okay, perfect. Any other closing questions? No? Good. So then thanks a lot for coming in. I will just close with the call to register for the next Lunch&Learn. You find it where you found this one, either on Eventbrite under F10 or on our website under the ecosystem. I want to point out our big event coming up on the 15th of December, where all the current incubation startups are coming in. You see it now? Okay. So you have to change on the online and here. But that's pretty much it from our end. Thanks a lot for joining. I have seen there is food for those who are here. Thanks a lot to everyone online who made it. Unfortunately, no food for you, or maybe you have something at home or wherever you are. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ja, warum?